owner, writer, creator of Locket Productions. I create sci-fi comic books. I've had the company for 9 years. I've been in the comic book industry for 10. I coordinated and I founded Women in Comics NYC about 4 years ago, when we've been going pretty strong. We do panel discussions, we do workshops, we do art exhibits. We have an art exhibit that opened today, but we're here with you because we want to be here with you today. To my right, please introduce yourself. We're going to go down the line and you ladies are going to tell us about yourselves.
Oh gosh.
Yes, to start with you.
It's a hard topic, right?
I know this is your first panel, so
yeah.
you and Shelley, so I'm going to inaugurate you guys.
First Women in Comics.
That's right. We're popping our panel cherries together. So I'm Foxy JB of the site Foxy Jezebel. I am a comic blogger, reviewer. I pretty much give my opinion on everything comics related, pop culture related, TV shows, anime, politics, what's going on in the industry, pretty much anything. If it's nerdy related, I usually have an opinion about it. I've also written reviews for Black Girl Nerds and done some interviews for the site Black Comics Month. And I will be releasing a webcomic for later in the year called The Preternaturals. And I've known Regine for years before, when her company was just a little seed, a little baby, and we recently reconnected a couple of years ago, and now it's just grown, and it makes me so happy to see that she's basically been doing her thing. And also one of the main niches of my site, Foxy Jezebel, is I offer something called the FXJB newsfeed, and basically I share nerdy news and reviews from mostly blurred sites, Black nerd sites, and people of color sites, because not everyone has access or has the ability to always be on IGN or Comic Book Resources or even Newsarama. So I share that news and I signal boost anything. If anything, anyone I know, if they're doing something comic related or movie related or, whatever, I do my best to signal boost it, because we're pretty much all we have. So
I want your card. Here too. Another one, please.
Hey, Shelley.
Hi, I'm Chelle Mayer. I draw stuff, sew things together, do a lot of drawings on the subway, and I'm right now kind of single panel comic, but I'm branching off. I grew up in the comics industry. My grandfather was a cartoonist and editor, so I pulled in my own direction for a little while, and it was always in my blood, and it came out in my sculptures and everything else I do. Like, I did this, and I draw on everything. I felt a little bit compared, which was silly, but now it was a natural progression to just come back. It wasn't even a conscious thought. It was like I looked up, and all of a sudden, hey, I landed back in comics. And it feels like a really good fit. It's surrealism in a way where it's a little bit nicer to write the world I want to live in than to live in the one that's already here.
Geisha.
Hi, my name is Geisha V. I'm a cosplayer, makeup artist, stylist, and stage performer. I'm also an advocate for multicultural awareness and anti-bullying. I started cosplaying about 10 years ago, and I've had a lot of really fun experiences, and I've watched as the industry has changed. And as the industry has changed, so have I. So I've gone from just cosplaying just to do it as a hobby to now I cosplay for various causes, and a lot of them tend to focus on basically helping the community get back to what it once was, where it was very welcoming for everyone, regardless of like ableism or your ethnicity or your body image. Like we did not have these issues before, and now since cosplay has become more mainstream, we've seen these aspects come in. And so a lot of my work now has been to encourage new cosplayers not to feel like they have to have like lots of money to cosplay or have the perfect body or be like the perfect image. You can go ahead and join the hobby. It's a fandom, whether you're a nerd or a geek. Do what you love and express yourself the best of your ability. So like I've continued on and pushing that particular theme in what I like to do. And since I've been doing it for so long, I now can say that I've done works that have been shared internationally across the board, which is pretty nice. And I've also been invited to go to Calgary, Canada's Calgary Entertainment and Comic Expo. So I'll be able to go over there and share my love of cosplay, and All America likes to welcome everybody into this family.
Very cool.
Awesome.
A Minecraft.
So we're gonna go down the line again. Well, actually, you can actually just jump in. What made you decide to make comics your career? Did it start as a hobby? Did you always have a love for it? Jelly.
I think if I chose a career, I might. For artists, and I think art, it chooses you, more or less. There has to be an intense passion. Like it's not something that can be approached just for an income or a job, and it just made sense to me. I mean, I was drawing before I could put words together, and sometimes it helps me to process the things that happen around me to then draw them, because this insane situation will happen on the subway or while you're sitting in customer service, which that's just a misnomer altogether. And you can't necessarily voice your opinion, but as you draw it out, there's a catharsis that you can find humor and layer that in and transform an experience that could have been frustrating into a relatable, humorous, fun to look at piece.
Foxy.
For me, I've always loved comics. I've been reading comics ever since I could read, and I've been drawing ever since the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were in the Sunday comics. I'm my age. Yeah. So my cousin and I both started drawing out together, but while he moved on to other things like sports and things like that, I kept up with it, and I was in numerous art clubs and Catholic school, and in high school I took up cartooning, and in college I took up graphic design. But the one thing that always stayed constant was me reading comics and reading manga and loving the stories and loving the art and being influenced by the art, both Western art and Eastern art. So I guess it was really all those things. It's something that I've always loved and also considered a hobby and also like to do. And now with social media and with Twitter and everything, we get to put the love for our hobbies out there and connect with like-minded folks.
Which is really important, because as artists, it's a very hermity thing. Maybe less.
It can be.
Yeah, it can. It really can
because
be.
like I said, being a cosplayer of color especially, we don't want to be hermits, but we kind of get a bit of the ostracized from the community because there's this barrier of skin color that unfortunately is there, and a lot of people don't like to talk about it. So it puts us in a position where we feel like we don't really have a voice for a lot of times, because if we do, it's like, oh, well, why are you being so negative about the situation? And it's like, I'm just saying what happened.
Exactly. Yeah, that's sort of the rub that's in recent years that it's come more to the forefront, since more people, since we're able to actually talk about it more, which is another good thing about social media. We don't have to silently endure anything. We can bring issues to the forefront and discuss them how we need to discuss them.
Where others can say, hey, me too.
Yeah, and you find out like, hey, I'm not the only person who's gone through this thing, and I'm not the only, comic girl who's, had her card pulled at like a comic book store or at a convention, or, you know, while playing a fighting game, and, you know, because I like Chun-Li, oh my God, so she possibly she couldn't
You know how
possibly
many guys
be good.
I beat with Chun-Li? Are you kidding me?
Basically.
I used to be a
Reason why she's
I used to, my little thing, I used to play competitively. And you too.
Yeah, I used to play
Too.
competitively at Capcom versus SNK too when I got back into the scene. But yeah, you know, there's just these things and experiences, and sometimes if you're just stuck in your little place, sometimes you feel like you might be the only one going through these things. But again, with the help of, you know, with social media and Twitter out there, you can voice these things, and then people can reply and like, yes, I've been through the exact same thing, and you know, you build a following, you solidify connections, you build that foundation of solidarity and everything, and it's really cool.
Well, with that said, in terms of, for all of you, and this is a question for all of you, what about your work do you think contributes to the overall comic book industry? Geisha.
Well, coming from the point of view of a comic consumer, because like I grew up on comics, my father and his entire job, they literally gave me a huge box of comics, and it's kind of like, here's your destiny. So from there, I got a taste of everything.
What a destiny.
Oh,
DC,
if only.
Marvel, Independent. So it was a great exposure, and we're big on sci-fi and foreign films as well. So like the anime and the manga kind of like showed through that also. He gave me Akira, so it was like my first big anime to watch. But as I got older and seeing the different changes and nuances, I noticed how like women were reflected in comics a lot. And in the beginning, I didn't really know what was going on because I'm a kid and just reading it. But as I got older and I experienced my own experiences being a young woman, I noticed how characters that I want to relate to, how they're either the script is changed or their costume is changed. And especially now as a cosplayer, I definitely pay attention to these things because as a cosplayer for myself, I take it to another step. Not only am I trying to recreate the character's costume, but I pick the character because there's something about that character that I like and I see within myself, or I want to embrace within myself. Not just because like they're cute or whatnot. Obviously, not just because they're cute. So there's got to be something to connect me with that person on that level, and like the way the writers script the story, the way they give the character development, the way the artist draws the character, or colors the ink person colors the character. All those things change throughout time, and they do affect whether or not I as a consumer can merge with this character and hold on to this comic series, or if I feel a disconnect because I don't feel that they've been expressed appropriately, or if there's enough representation of whatever within the comic industry. So I think like for a while women really weren't counted as like consumers, which was unfortunate, and the more we spoke out about it, the more I saw comics change. Perfect example, Harley Quinn. She's no longer with Joker. She's no longer in that abusive relationship anymore. Mm-hmm. And no matter how much I love the insanity of that, I really could not deny as an adult the undertones of domestic violence because I know the reality of that. So it was very hard for me to enjoy that character because I'm awake in that subject. So I can't connect and enjoy it as much as someone who might not know as much about domestic violence. So when I cosplay a character, I stayed away from Harley for a very long time because of that environment behind her. Now that they've changed it, now it allows me to be more comfortable to cosplay Harley at any venture because when I cosplay her, I don't feel like I'm representing that anymore. So I'm really happy that the industry is kind of paying attention to that stuff now.
Well, it's more acceptable now because it really is a guy's industry. And it's, the more we have a voice in it, the more we're able to kind of tweak those stories a little bit because we're spending the money on it.
Yeah. And with all the female cosplayers who really wanted Harley, like, I didn't think at first cosplayers really had much of a say, but again, we are the consumers who buy the comics too, and some cosplayers grow up to become like comic artists. So it's like, within that, it lets you know, like, I know a lot of the panels that we've done before, like to see people like yourself, Regine, and you ladies encourage us to be like, hey, you want to change? do it. Like, a lot of us have actually done that, and I really
Be the
enjoy
change
seeing
you want to
change.
see.
Exactly.
Be the
Yeah,
change you want to
So
see.
on that level, as a cosplayer, like, I like to consider myself, whatever I do helps push that theme. So like, I try my best to stay on that focus.
Yeah, and for as much as you know, certain comic companies, they do have the last say. We also have a say as consumers of any product, you know. So it's best for us to learn how to use that voice a little more. It's like,
You
hey,
use your dollars.
use your
dollars.
use your dollars to talk for
That's
you.
the most
Since-
influential
yeah,
thing
since,
for
you
any
know,
business.
since,
No one
you know,
wants to lose money.
Yeah, and the Supreme Court stated that money is speech, so feel free to use feel free to speak when it comes to certain
your dollars.
things, to speak with your dollars when there are things that are happening that are problematic and you want a say, definitely say something with your mouth and with your money.
I think the indie scene has a big influence on it too, where it wasn't as easy before to self-publish. There are so many more tools at our disposal now that the bigger companies will see and they'll be like, hey, there's money in that stupid idea. And then it's not so stupid anymore. And it has a domino effect on how characters are viewed in the mainstream.
And on what types of stories you receive.
Absolutely.
So, you know, and I think you're definitely right about the indie side having more of an effect on the mainstream side, because you see companies like Image, they offer a lot more creator-owned stories.
They're technically an indie company.
Since being that they've been around for so, I guess they've been around for so long. Like it's hard for me to be like, oh my God, they're still an indie company.
Technically they are. Technically they are.
Well, I just got world technically.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Well, because you lose your rights a lot as an artist from there's more immediate money there probably from a big company, but that's not your character anymore. You know, I have friends that have drawn some pretty mainstream and invented them, and even at their own tables now they're not allowed to do. They do, but it's owned by somebody else. So that can be frustrating too. That might be where the technically part comes from. There's a lot of creativity that artists, for a long time, we were just kind of tucked somewhere, weirdos. You know, we'll drink wine around what you do, but please don't make us look at you. And now they realize that there's a lot of value in what we're saying and what we're doing, so it's been turned into a commodity.
But in regards to what you were saying, that what you asked, what each of us sort of bring
To the table.
bring to the table.
No, you were saying it.
No, you were saying it. It's definitely apt to the question. I think, or I would hope, what I bring to the table is a voice, is letting people know that another resource, another connection that people can come to and utilize if they want to be successful and reach out to other people. That's what I would hope. And knowing that a lot of times I have a lot of things to say and express, so I tend to use my Twitter a lot to express pretty much anything. Anything. Yeah, she follows me. She knows anything and everything that's on my mind that I can say within 140 characters. I say it, you know. But I'm glad to be able to do it. You know, I love people complain about Twitter. I complain about Twitter as well, but I am happy that it's here because it is a great avenue for people who are used to not having a voice, especially for people of color, women of color especially. It's been a struggle for us to have our voices noticed by the mainstream by any other means. So we've had to use what tools we can to really put ourselves out there, and Twitter has been a really great help for a lot of us.
Well, we sort of touched on this next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So
Can I
maybe we
add
can
one more
flesh
thing
it out.
to that?
Maybe. I'm teasing you. Go
Real
ahead.
quick, but one of the things for me, and that because there's a lot of comic, and I grew up with my grandfather who was a golden age cartoonist and everything was done with inks. And the digital color, some of it's done really well, but if you have 500 colors, you do not have to use them all on one page. And with the digital, there's a little bit lost, it becomes visual techno. So I'm very into the hand coloring, and I think there's not enough of that these days. Like Sarah Woolley does some
Yes,
really amazing
she
stuff,
does.
Yeah,
but
she
Yeah.
does. I've seen it.
as a general rule, it's come away from, it's a very visual
Authenticity.
techno, yeah.
Yeah.
And it gets a little bit loud for the text that you're trying to read. I mean, there's just so much in your face. So I try to keep hand coloring in the mix. Okay.
It's okay, it's all right. So, we touched on it, but I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit more. The industry is constantly changing. What change do you think is the most influential, or will be the longest lasting?
See, it's that last part, the longest lasting, because like changes happen, even though it feels like it takes forever to happen. For example, like we were saying with the Harley Quinn, but will it last? My hope is that with this change, that other comic companies and writers will start respecting the female characters more, because my other personal gripe has been with the character Starfire. And
yeah.
I think everybody has that
for,
gripe.
yeah,
They-
for
Makes
anyone
sense.
who's followed my costume work, like I love cosplaying her, and I have multiple versions of her. Like,
You've won awards for playing.
I've won awards for
Yes, she
for
has.
cosplaying
She
her.
has.
And I have a deep connection with this character, but it's because of her original backstory. And due to the success of Marvel's Civil War series, DC decided to do what was called the New 52, and they rewrote everybody.
Yeah.
And
They never do that.
yeah. So for a competitive move, they did it, and as a
Yeah.
result, they diminished a lot of the hard background of a lot of these well-known characters, and it caused a disconnect in reference to what I was saying before. Like for myself, if I'm going to be inspired by someone's work, I have to feel connected. And so when I cosplay Starfire now, I still continue to, because I know her true origins. I find myself a lot of times having to educate people on not being sexist towards cosplayers who cosplay characters who are seen as sexy, because the character is not really supposed to be there just as boobs and a shield because they have supernatural powers. There actually is a person, personality connected to that persona, and that the person who's cosplaying that person is cosplaying that. Their body may be their body, however it's shaped, but they are embodying that character. So I like to remind a lot of people that Starfire is from George Perez, and the 1980s, and her original design was within itself sexy. It didn't need to be changed, but because as you guys have known, with the comic industry, they want to make everything new and hip and redo old stuff, and by doing that, they made her an automaton, which I've seen them do on both sides, both Marvel, DC. Mm-hmm. So a lot of their female characters, they're just boobs and hair and flashy lights, like the visual techno, but with no core backing to these characters anymore. And I'm like, come on, there was so much good story there. Like, why do you have to delete that just to fall in line with what seems to be the mainstream, and that's across media? Women have not really been depicted as the smart, intellectual, charismatic, and witty creatures that we are. We don't have to just be pretty faces. I think that the comic industry really needs to tap back into that, because we had that in the 80s. Even with all the Technicolor nonsense, we had that. And
Even in the early 90s.
yeah, even in the early
Angel
90s.
Love.
Oh,
Remember Angel
90s,
Love?
yeah.
Early 90s. When she
Yeah.
got to 99, it all went to hell. Always tell people, stop reading X-Men at 2000.
Oh
Year
yeah,
2000.
actually, Legacy Virus, and that was it.
Well, the early Wonder Woman, she was tied up and being spanked on pretty much every page.
Yeah, she was. But there was a story there. At least no, I mean, we can have a big argument about Wonder Woman, but at least she had something that was solid, concrete,
Yeah.
and then it became a
It's true.
debacle.
That's true. I think
My grandfather was the editor with that.
I'm very sorry. But that's how I felt about it.
I kind of wish I would have been a fly in the room when they were drafting those pages. Actually,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think with the changes, I think the industry is paying a bit more attention, and I hope I think we can only hope that those will be a bit more long lasting, and also changes in having people of color tell their own stories. You know, it's gotten to the point where you kind of feel like the word diversity functions more as just a buzzword, but not enough companies are doing it in practice. You know what I mean? So I hope that we keep going in that direction, and we get more stories more reflective of reality. I know I say that, and you know, they're comics, it's supposed to be for the imagination and everything, and totally apolitical, even though
Never happened.
even though, like, you know, in the 1940s and 50s, you know, the Captain America comics had you know, Steve Rogers punching Adolf Hitler,
In the
so
face,
but totally not political at all. But yeah, I think that the industry is taking steps to go into the right direction. I hope that they continue, but you know, we have experienced some backlash with that.
So we want to see less fads.
Yeah, we want to see
Less fads.
less fads,
Okay.
and more of the building a foundation for things that are a bit more long lasting. And please God, no more new
Well, no,
thank
new
you.
52
DC
things
is doing
come out.
Rebirth. DC is doing Rebirth.
Yes,
Stop.
and they wrecked Sugar and Spike. I don't even.
I don't know.
They're doing Rebirth. They're saying it's not a reboot.
Look what they did to Scribbly. It just makes me want to punch myself in the head.
What is Scribbly?
Scribbly, the comic that was my grandfather's from
Oh,
the teens,
yeah.
20s, and 30s, and now he's like this. He looked, you know, the round glasses and the boy cartoonist, and now he's this like Robin Hood, strange, overcolorized character that the copyright was running out, and they had to do something with the name.
Well, similarly what they do with Shazam. That's what they have to
But
do
that's
with
what a
Shazam.
lot of the rebirth with DC is about, because a lot of those copyrights were expiring at the same time, and that's how the color. Did you see the resurgence with the half of Scribbly's face and half with black?
No,
with the
I
new?
didn't.
It's a lot of it because they were losing copyrights and they didn't want to
Oh,
lose
you
those.
mean during the whole convergence thing where they had half
Yeah.
the face?
That's
split?
Scribbly,
Oh, okay.
but now he's a completely different character, and that was to maintain the copyrights. So, I mean, in my mind, some of them are good rewritten, but then just do another character altogether, and do a golden age nod to these characters if you want to redo the copyright, and then create something else as maybe a cousin comic, but completely change it.
Well, this is a different conversation, but,
Oh.
you know, different things, I mean, well, in the sense that, well, I mean, what I'm going to say is a different conversation. I mean, certain things are done to attract a new audience.
Yeah.
You know, they think that the old stuff won't stick. So that's why you do Rebirth and the New 52, and you know, you change, Golden Age becomes Silver Age, becomes Bronze Age, becomes
Rust.
Black Age, becomes everything's age. You know, because they think that the old characters, the old stories will not stick. You know, but if they trusted the stories and trusted the characters, maybe they give a chance and it would stick.
Maybe.
That's just my 2 cents.
But when they did the anthology, like of Sugar and Spike, the book was $45. So to anyone that's not a diehard collector, it's not going to bring it to a new audience at $45.
Well, no, it's not. No, you have to make it accessible.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I talked to the person in charge of that at DC,
Mm-hmm.
and the explanation, Paul's just my favorite. Or he's not there anymore, but his explanation was, at that price point, with the amount that would sell, he was going to make the same amount of money if he sold it at that price point than the double amount that they would make at the half as much. So while they make the same amount of money, it's less effort this way, which shouldn't be the point in putting content out there.
Well, you know, also
It's corporate.
Again, it's corporate, and it's
Yeah, it's
another
corporate,
conversation.
yeah.
But it's corporate. They're not artists, so they're not going to look at it like that.
They're
you know?
they're mostly concerned. Their main concern is the bottom.
The bottom line and how quick they can get that bottom line.
But one of
That's
the
extra industry information.
One of the biggest changes I think that did occur that was crucially important and is picking up momentum is in the 30s and 40s it was embarrassing to say that you worked on comics, and it was not a respectable job at all, and you were treated like you were destroying the youth, and they would lie a lot of times and say they're illustrators or different things. And there's such a respect now with the industry, and there's actually classes being taught in the Ivy League universities, and there's the comics at Columbia, this whole thing, and so
Yeah. And SVA,
that
they
changed.
have their cartoon
Yeah.
department.
Yep.
So that's an extremely important change that gave validity to the writers and the artists that have really important content to put out.
So I'm gonna probably do just one more question, and we'll take it to if there's any questions. So definitely feel free to ask them. What advice do you wish someone would have given you when you first started out boxing?
Let's see, the advice I wish someone would have given me when I first started out. I wish I don't know about advice, but I wish I would have had more people in my corner supporting me, that network, because often when you want to do something, and it goes back to what you were saying about comics and, you know, writing and the art being more acceptable as a profession. You know, when I was in high school, my major was cartooning, and I wanted to go on to an SVA or an FIT or something like that and get into sequential art. That's what my original dream was. And to always be told or reminded on how difficult a field it was, and, you know, or how will you be able to support yourself, and yada, yada, yada. Those types of things, we like to think that we're not affected by being told those things. But if it comes especially from people who, you know, we love and trust, if we get that type of feedback on our dreams, it definitely does affect you. So you never know the effect that you may have on somebody when you sort of, you know, deflect or put down something that they want to do. So I would have wished I would have had more people in my corner at that time, because maybe it wouldn't have taken me that long to come back. It's sort of been full circle for me. I moved away from more of the art and went to school for graphic design, but then I couldn't find work. So at first I thought, well, maybe I'll just scrub it, you know, just leave it alone altogether. And then my partner was like, why don't you just, you know, go back to school and finish what you started? So I did. And the more I got into school, the more I started really getting back into things that I like comics. And then I started getting back into drawing, and then a lot. And now, you know, I can actually say that I'm going to put out, you know, drawing content, my own work from my own hand, and I'm writing and I'm blogging and I'm doing all of these things, and it's definitely come full circle. So if I had advice to give, or if someone would have given me advice that I can share, is definitely make those connections with people and be there for them, and support them, give them the push that they need, and hopefully they'll give you the push that you need, so everyone can achieve their goals together.
Good answer.
I try.
Shelley.
Actually, I think I got it from my grandfather. He told me early on, whether people love your work or they hate your work, it's none of your fucking business. It'll just distract you. If you're passionate about it, stick with it. Keep making it. Don't like it, because a lot of kudos or insults, like she said, it really influences you. And somebody could be praising something that you don't like very much, but you stick with it because it felt good to hear, and really stay with the passion that you feel in it, and that's there for a reason, and that will motivate you and pull you further into where the medium is going to take you and where it's meant to go.
For myself, this is going back towards high school before I even came to New York, I was given major support and A from my father, who was very similar on the point of phrasing. And then I had my gifted and talented teacher, and she told me, she was like, oh, I see you want to go into science. And she's like, oh, that's great, but your gift is in language. She's like, that's wonderful, but this is where you need to be. And at first, I really didn't pay attention to the whole thing, but once I came to New York and I got more into the social aspect, it was just a matter of like having more access to where my natural gifts could be. And then eventually I had to call her back and let her know, like, oh, remember when you were talking about the whole, like, getting into communications and using my languages? I was like, yeah, I ended up having to do that because that really was more me. But the only reason why I was pushing the sciences was because my mother was big into the whole, like, you have to become a doctor or a lawyer and blah, 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 blah. And I was pushed more into that. So for me, it was taking, like, my aspect of creative criticism. I was very, like, about getting criticized from people.
Yeah.
Because I was so used to the tire mom aspect that, like, I didn't know if the person was giving me something genuine or they just wanted to cut me down, because I got that all the time. So for me, to give advice to my younger self, I would have been like, look more into what they're telling you. Don't focus on the fact that they're speaking to you about something particularly. Find the genuineness into their words, because then you can differentiate when someone's being, you know, kind and supportive to you, or when someone's just giving you, sabotaging you and you don't even know it because they're like, oh yeah, that's great, that's wonderful, yeah, go
Out of
ahead.
jealousy because they're not doing it.
So a lot of that I wish I could have been told, but I mean, it's good. Like, I've been blessed so far along my path, and sure, I may have lost a few friends along the way due to the jealousy of just life, but for every trial and tribulation, I can truly say that it's just pushed me further to what I really have to do. And if I have to pick up my britches and rebuild my building blocks, it's going to be on a stronger foundation. And that's why I like to push to, like, a lot of other cosplayers out there who get chastised for their weights, or, you know, not feeling that they have the best costume. Like, I feel so strongly for every cosplayer that comes to me with that story, because I just relive my life when they tell me. And, you know, I put on the great face and, like, the smiles and happiness, because as a professional now, that's what I have to do. But words to anyone out there that really knows me, I'm a real person, and I cry when I get every email that tells me what they're going through. And I have to kind of, like, wipe away my own tears to give them that encouragement that they need, and it keeps me so humble. So I'm so grateful for that, because it puts me in the mindset to give them the advice I wish I could have had.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy to be able to do that. Yeah.
Well, thank you, ladies, so much for sharing yourselves with us. I know I appreciate it. I know the audience appreciates it. So I just want to give you a hand for that. Thank you so much. Before I take it to questions really quickly, we do have a couple of events coming up. We have a Women in Comics Con on 3/12. We have flyers for that. We have an opening reception for our art show, Our Voices. The show officially opened this Saturday, today. But next Saturday we have an official opening, and all of our events are free to the public. So definitely grab a card before you leave. So that's us. It's Women in Comics NYC.